If you looked at your life through the lens of these 5 types of wealth, which one are you currently over-investing in and which one might need more attention? The question alone can change how you design the next decade of your life. Today, I'm talking about redefining what it means to be wealthy in 2026. I think this is a topic that is not talked enough about, and I really want to help you expand your understanding of what it means to be wealthy. So, why is it important to talk about redefining wealth right now? Well, because we live in a period where financial performance and personal depletion are happening at the same time. Many business owners, high income professionals, people who tend to be very career driven, they're earning more than ever. You have strong corporate profits. If you're incorporated, you have your surplus earnings, your portfolios are appreciating. Maybe you have real estate investment properties, yet your burnout, anxiety, loneliness, and your health issues are also rising. In fact, this is the number one reason why people are reaching out to someone like myself as a financial planner, is to know when they can slow down so that they can start spending more time in the other buckets of wealth. And the reason why this is a problem, and we need to talk about this right now, is because the traditional scorecard of wealth, so how much you're making, how much is your net worth, and what is the valuation of your assets, is incomplete. If wealth only measures your accumulation, you're ignoring time autonomy, energy and health, your relationship quality, and your mental clarity and purpose. And this is what we're increasingly seeing: people who are financially successful, but they're not holistically wealthy. And that's why I want to help you today to redefine wealth, because success is becoming one-dimensional, especially when you look at the comparison culture that is amplified using financial metrics and also social media. And then entrepreneurs are optimizing spreadsheets, but they're also neglecting life balance. And yes, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to be 110% dedicated in your business. But I want to show you another way to go about it so that you don't neglect one of the most important parts of life. So if we don't redefine wealth intentionally, the market, the media, and the social platforms will define it for us, and they usually define it very narrowly. So who's this conversation for today? Well, if you're a career-driven, entrepreneurs, business owner, you're someone in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, and you're still building aggressively, you tend to be close to maybe your peak earnings, but now you're looking at other ways that you want to transfer those peak earnings into lasting financial independence so that you can start taking care of other areas in your life. This is the conversation is really going to hit home for you. And if you're someone who is thinking, oh, I'm doing well on paper, but why doesn't it feel that is enough? So this is not a conversation about abandoning your financial ambitions whatsoever. It's about integrating it into a broader definition of success. So how am I going to be able to help you today with this conversation? Well, I'm going to go through a clear framework through the 5 types of wealth. There's financial, time, physical, social, and mental. And this is a framework that was developed by Sahil Bloom in his book, The 5 Types of Wealth, which had an instrumental impact on my life. And this is why I'm sharing it in this conversation today. But it's also why I've integrated this framework into my process when I work with clients, starting right from the onboarding process. The second part is I wanted to do a diagnostic lens with you where I want to help you audit your own life through this episode. If you stop working tomorrow, what continues? Who benefits from your success? Does your calendar really reflect your values? Is your energy improving or declining? So this conversation, I want to turn it from theory, but to self-assessment. And I want to help you do a strategic reframe. I want to show you how financial planning, which is what I do, which I absolutely love doing and the work I do with my clients, when done properly, it's not about maximizing returns. Yes, maximizing returns is important, and we have a wonderful and amazing and efficient investment philosophy there that is helping you capture the best market returns possible that is offered by the market. But really, that's not what it's about. It's about buying time, protecting relationships, preserving your health, reducing your stress, and creating yourself optionality. So in other words, money is the enabler. Integration is the goal. So by the end of this episode, you'll walk away with a broader, more intentional definition of wealth and a better understanding of how to build it without sacrificing the other 4 domains. So let's dive in. Before we dive into those 5 types of wealth, let's cover the global wealth pyramid. And I want you to conceptualize that pyramid. So of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a visual. If you're listening to this on Spotify or podcast, then I hope that this conversation still makes sense. But first, let's start at the bottom of the pyramid. under people who have under $10,000 in net worth. There's about 3 to 4 billion people globally, adults. That's 50% of the world's adults population. And this is the base of the global financial systems. Many individuals in this tier, they have little to no financial assets. Many may carry, debt exceeding their assets. They're very highly vulnerable to economic shocks, especially if there's meaningful changes to their income. But collectively, this group owns less than 5% of global wealth. This is under $10,000 in net worth. Now, the second group is $10,000 to $100,000 in net worth. This is about 1.5 to 2 billion adults, another 25 to 30%. And these are often early stage savers, the growing middle class, and people have some equity in their home and then modest savings. Then when you go to the third level, it's between $100,000 and $1 million net worth. This is about 600 to 700 million of adults estimated, 10 to 15% of the global adult population. And this is what we call upper middle class. In developed countries, this often includes homeowners. We did a video about renting versus buying last week, so you might want to check this out, where renters and homeowners, actually it's very interesting how the wealth is not that meaningfully different when a renter has really good habits and is very disciplined. Anyway, that's a different topic. But usually those people will have retirement accounts, business equity, which I would assume is probably most people listening to this podcast and this tuning into my channel. Many of the Canadian business owners fall in this, in this accumulation period, right? Between 100,000 and $1 million. And then number 4 is over $1 million. This is estimated to be 60 to 65 million adults, to 1.5% of global adults. So if you're a millionaire today in net worth, you're in the top 1.5% globally. Most millionaires are actually not celebrities or CEOs. Many have built wealth slowly via home ownership, investing, real estate, private businesses. And we've made a video about how millennials are actually reaching their first million. If you go back, I believe it's episode 8, so you might want to check this out. But a large portion of them are retirees. So this tier owns a significant share of global wealth. And then the number 5 is people with net worth over 30 million, called the ultra high net worth. These individuals, there's about 400,000 globally. They actually represent 0.005% of the global population. And they typically tend to own, large private businesses. They're major shareholders, and they potentially have multi-generational capital. And then the top of the pyramid is the billionaires. So you have 1 billion or more in net worth. You're looking at around 2,600 estimated individuals globally, and they represent 0.00004% of the global population. Statistically, they're negligible in population, but they have a massive influence. So what's the point of you knowing this? Well, there's a few things. One is that if you're most likely listening to this, I would tend to assume that your net worth is probably anywhere over $100,000, most likely maybe over $1 million. And that there's actually 50% of the populations that don't have $10,000. So I think just a reminder of how to be grateful and having gratitude about what we have, especially in Canada, and how much of an amazing country that we live in, which around peace, even though it's not perfect. And you may or may not disagree with the political side of things, but ultimately we have such an amazing life. And regardless of what you have, there's probably a lot of people who have a lot less than what we have. So I think it's being grateful of that. Second is that this game is never ending. There's always going to be people who are going to be much wealthier than you. So that comparison game is really a complete waste of time and can lead to extreme unhappiness. So just being kind of cognizant of that. But then the third part is that I actually worked for a billionaire, and I want to make an episode about this. So stay tuned for more content. And now that that was 4 years ago. And at the time, I didn't appreciate the lessons that I've learned, not necessarily about how they ran their family offices, but there's some key lessons that we can actually all apply, even though we're not billionaires, that they do for themselves. And they're actually really critical into building wealth, because financial wealth is important, but there's 4 areas of wealth, which I'm going to cover today. But financial is a big one. And the other thing too that I want to touch on is that there's a diminishing return of increasing wealth. For example, the relationship between wealth and happiness is actually not linear. If you look at someone who makes $35,000, if overnight they're going up to $70,000, they have the ability to increase their income to $70,000, that's going to be a drastic improvement in their standard of living and probably their happiness. But if someone goes from $200,000 to $400,000, that increase in happiness is going to be much lower. And this is because once your basic needs are met, your safety is secured, your lifestyle, is comfortable and is achieved, incremental gain shrinks massively. And this is critical for our high earners because I want to help you understand why you're earning your extra dollar, your next dollar. What's the point of earning that next dollar? Where is that next dollar going towards? And could you use the time that you're spending to earn that next dollar to allocate to maybe another bucket that would actually improve your happiness and make a bigger difference for you? So in order to redefine well, we need to redefine the game and the scoreboard. And this is exactly what Sahil does in his book. It's a new way to measure the right things, make better decisions, and design your journey to wealth, success, happiness, and fulfillment. Your wealthy life may be enabled by money, but in the end, it will be defined by everything else. And I'm quoting his book here. So the ideal approach of the foundation building season of your 20s may not be well suited to the compounding season of your 30s, the family building season of your 40s, the purpose finding season of your 50s, and the retiree season of your 60s and beyond. Similarly, the ideal approach for your later seasons may not work for your earlier ones. There's no predetermined guide for this journey. Everyone's seasons are unique. Everyone's definition of balance is unique. There are no fixed timeline on which you can change, fall, learn, grow, and adapt. There are no requirements. There's no right or wrong. So I want you to know that. The first step to designing your life, your dream life, is identifying two things, because that's what we're doing. What is our dream life? What do we want? How do we want our life? How do we want to live our life? That's really what it comes down to. And the first thing that you need to do is you need to identify two things. You need to identify your goals, what you want to happen, what's important for you. And then you want to identify your anti-goals, the things that you don't want to happen on your journey. And being clear on those two things really actually going to make you a big difference in helping you refocus on your goals. So goals are things that, you want to happen. This includes your big, audacious, long-term ambitions and your medium-term checkpoints objectives. But the deeper message in life is about direction, not speed. And I tend to be caught up on this, especially in my younger age. Now I've slowed down dramatically, especially even like in my career. I'll be in this career for probably another 30. I used to think a lot more short term and wanting things to happen a lot faster. And now I'm really comfortable with things taking a long time and really building for the future. When you look at the relationship I'm building with clients, I will be with clients for 3+ decades potentially. And this really reshifted even how I'm sharing content, what I'm putting out, the pace at which I'm doing things, how I'm making decisions, how I'm presenting, because we're getting pitched all the time in terms to push products to clients. And I'm able to really park all this aside to make sure that whenever I'm conversing with clients and I'm recommending you strategies, it's in your best interest for the next decades to come. There's nothing short term, no short term commission chasing, none of that stuff. And I absolutely love it. Okay, get back to this is a side note here. But after you have identified your goals and your anti-goals, the next thing you need to do is have high leverage systems in place. So if your goals and your anti-goals are your direction, the high leverage systems are the engine that will drive you forward into that envisioned future. So keep in mind the famous quote from James Clear: you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So having high leverage systems in place is critical, because systems are your daily actions that create your forward progress. And then the leverage, it amplifies the output of a single unit of input. So when you combine these two ideas, high leverage systems are the daily actions that create amplified asymmetric forward progress. Now, there's a key concept that Sahil shared in his book that called the dimmer switch, because you want to avoid the on-off trap. Let me explain. An old school of thought would contend that you focus on each type of wealth in a binary state. You either focus on financial wealth or you don't focus on financial wealth. You either focus on physical or you don't focus on physical. This is a huge problem, because it would say that you can have at most two types flipped at any point in time, and that the other three would have to be flipped off. But the fundamental problem with this is that if one remains off for too long, you can never turn it back on again. If you don't nurture and cultivate your relationship in your 20s and 30s, you won't have them in your 40s. If you don't invest in your health in your 40s and 50s, you won't have it in your 60s. If you don't take care of your mind in your 60s and 70s, you won't have it in your 80s. And I see this all the time, especially I would say more like baby boomers and maybe later Gen X. When I'm gonna be retired, I'm gonna be exercising. When I'll be retired, I'll be traveling. When I'll be retired, I'll do X, Y, and Z. But you've never done it in your lifetime. So what is the likelihood that you will be doing that suddenly overnight? You may, but it might be a lot harder to actually start a new habit once you retired. And there was a study made, longitudinal research that shows that personality traits and behavioral pattern are remarkably stable after the age 30 and 35. So if you're listening to this and you're under that age, the patterns and the behavior you're developing are extremely important. So if you're 45 and you don't exercise, or you don't invest in your friendship at 50, or you don't pursue hobbies at 55, there's no automatic behavioral switch at 65, because retirement changes calendar structure. It does not automatically change identity. And that's a key thing to remember and to start implementing those habits early, which is what ultimately I want to help you with. And it starts with focusing on time wealth. So time wealth is the freedom to choose how to spend your time, who to spend it with, where to spend it, and when to trade it for something else. Because time is one of the most valuable currency that you may have. So it is characterized by an appreciation and deep understanding of the precious nature of time as an asset. It is an asset. It has value and it has huge importance. It is a control of your time, the ability to establish your own priorities, to set the terms on which you say yes or no to opportunities. In 2021, there was a paper of personality and social psychology that reviewed two large-scale data set of about 35,000 Americans. And they discovered that there's the relationship between free time and happiness follows an inverse U shape, meaning that if you both have too little time and too much free time, it can actually lead to unhappiness. The freedom to allocate the time according to your preference, to choose how you spend it, where you spend it, and whom you spend it with is the ultimate goal. But you also want to be involved, and ultimately you want to be appreciated and you want to feel important. I was reading some really good articles about this. And the reason why too much free time can lead to unhappiness is because some people lose their purpose. And when they were busy, think of parents. If you're listening to this and you're a parent with kids, younger kids that depends on you, they need you. And that need, once no one is no longer needing you, can be lead to unhappiness. So personally, I have an extremely wealthy when you look at time wealth, because I've started my own business as a self-employed financial planner and wealth advisor, and I have the utmost control of my time. And I can tell you that it's definitely the happiest that I've ever been as far as what I can choose to allocate my time to. I love creating content. It makes me a much better advisor, a much better planner, and servicing clients. But I get a lot of downtime that I never used to have when I was on the corporate side. So if you're out there and you don't have that luxury, I would highly recommend you to rethink if there was in any way, shape, or form, you would have the ability to carve out some time of your schedule to give yourself some time wealth, so you can allocate the way you want, because I think it goes a long way in improving your happiness. But again, not too much, because that might, as you mentioned, it follows more of a U curve shape. Now, the second type of wealth is social wealth. This is the connection to others in your personal and professional world, the depth and breadth of your connection to those around you. It is the network you can rely on for love and friendship, but it's also for help in times of needs. It provides a texture that allows you to appreciate the other types of wealth. Because what is good to have freedom to control your time if you don't have anyone special to spend it with? What joys can physical vitality, being healthy physically, bring if you can't enjoy physical pursuit with people you love? What satisfaction can money provide you if there's no one to dot on? So social wealth is defined by a few deep, meaningful, healthy relationships and a fulfilling breadth of surface ties throughout your community and your culture. There's a study that tracked and measured the lives of a combined 724 original male participants and more than 1,300 of their male and female descendants. It was actually one of the longest longitudinal study, and they found that strong, healthy relationships are the best predictor of life satisfaction, far outpacing hypothesized predictors such as social class, wealth, fame, IQ, and genetics. Perhaps even more important, the study found that relationship satisfaction had a direct positive impact on physical wealth or physical health. Sorry. To reiterate that critical point, so the single predictor of physical health at age 80 was relationship satisfaction at age 50. On the flip side, loneliness was found to be worse for one's health than regular use of tobacco or alcohol. That's huge. So you may need food, water, and shelter to survive, but it's human connection that allows you to thrive. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of introvert out there that might completely disagree with this, but ultimately having some, even if it's a small number of high quality, deep relationship is really key to your long-term happiness. So there's two sides to things. So being present and spending time with those you love is the most important thing in the end. But having the people you love see you work hard on things you care about, it is the principle they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And I think this is a great way to characterize this, because as a future father or someone who wants a family, who knows that we will be expanding our family in the next couple of years, I definitely want my kids to see me as someone who really worked hard on the things that I really cared. My career is one of them. My fitness is one of them. My relationships with my family and some close friends is one of them, and so on. So I think it's really important to show that to the next generation. That work-life balance can be very tricky, because if you're really committed to growing something, it will consume a huge amount of time, and you might have to give up certain social activities in order to be focused on your ultimate goal. So I think it's a work-life balance is a lot easier said than done. But always remember, the days are long, but the years are short. Life goes so fast, and I'm noticing now as I'm building my business, the months are going by so fast, especially when you go from project to project. Times I can't believe how much it flies. But to live in abundant social wealth, focus on what must be earned, not what can be bought. So for example, now we're talking about falling in love. Falling in love is easy. Growing in love is hard. Falling is what you see on social media. Growing is what you don't see. Growing in love is about developing and deepening a bond through discomfort, painful periods, darkness, hard conversations, and challenges. Growing in love happens over long periods across seasons of life in waves that come and go. Growing in love is what creates the depth of a lifelong bond. And I see this definitely in my relationship. I've been with my partner for 13 years, and we're in our 13th year right now. And definitely the growing part takes a huge amount of work, like anything else in life. It takes work, and the rewards are just amazing. But I just want to share a few things with you that can give you some ideas depending on what type of initiatives you're doing in your relationship. And this is something I'm definitely still working on. But for example, with my fiance, we have our monthly meetings that are like quite formal in a way. We have a list of questions that we go through. And then out of that, we also created a dates calendar. So on New Year's Day, we created about 25 different dates for the year, give and take 2 a month, and some are small. Like for on tomorrow on Friday, we're going ice skating, her and I, and then after that, we're gonna have a coffee and a muffin, or like a treat, or of some sort. But the point is, yeah. So we created a days calendar to keep us accountable, and now we've scheduled all of them, because again, time goes so fast. That's one of the way that we want to create those intimate moments and continue on working on our relationship while we're both working on our careers. And then with friendships, it's important to have activities relatively often with friends. I mean, now it's mostly about once a month. Sometimes it can be longer than that, but having key groups where you can connect into. Definitely one of our groups is around the fitness community that we can plug into. And that's bring me a ton of happiness to feel part of the kind of that broader community around people who really care about their fitness and their health. So my takeaway for you is, depending on what your passions are, what groups you're part in, making sure that you continue making those efforts. And if this podcast can encourage you to reach out to someone that maybe you haven't reached out in a long time, I hope it encourages you to take the next step. Now, mental wealth is the connection to a higher order purpose and meaning that provides motivation and guides you short and long-term decision making. It is grounded in the pursuit of growth that embraces the dynamic potential of your intelligence, ability, and character, and an engagement in lifelong learning and development. So Sahil covered 3 parts of mental health. So there's purpose, growth, and space. So let me cover them very quickly. The purpose is the clarity of defining your unique vision and focus that creates meaning and aligns short and long-term goal decision making. The unwillingness to live someone else's life. That I think is key, to focus solely on how you want to live your life and disregarding what maybe others are doing that might not be in your best interest. And that's true in, I think, all areas of life. This purpose provides your daily meaning. It creates an identity and an understanding of who you are, what you stand for, where you're going. It defines how you connect with the world around you. And your purpose doesn't need to be impressive or grand to anyone else. It's personal, it's yours. And it's combined of kind of three parts: what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs. That's the Ikigai concept. I might have butchered that word. But yeah, if you can nail down those three things: what you love, the activities that are life giving; what you're good at, the activities that feel effortless; and what the world needs, the activities that your current world needs from you. And then, getting rewarded for that. If you can merge those three things, that's why I believe that why my happiness and my fulfillment is so great is because through financial planning, I really found my calling, my ability to help people simplify their finances, give them sound advice that is in their best interest, and also making a meaningful impact on their peace of mind and giving them clarity about where they're heading. I get extreme fulfillment when I see people, when they see their stress level being reduced, and then chasing things that they might have passed on, because that's what it's all about. Do the things that we want to do in life. I get an absolute thrill when I'm able to help people like this, and then I see them taking actions that is actually benefiting them in all their areas of life, and improving their wealth in the four buckets beyond the financial one. So the second part within so the second part within the mental health is growth. And this is the hunger to progress and change, driven by the understanding of the dynamic potential of your intelligence, ability, and character. And according to research, you might have heard this before, but there's really two concepts around mindset. There's the fixed mindset. You assume that the ability, intelligence, and character is static. And then there's the growth mindset. You assume that the ability, intelligence, and characters are dynamic. So those who adopt a growth mindset are prepared to face life's inevitable challenges with a positive, optimistic, and resilient look. I have a question for you. Do you think the best investors have a growth mindset, or are more like tend to be more optimistic, or you think the best investors are pessimists? Comment below. I could be curious, because I do have a funny story about this. One of the manager I reported to at some point in my life, who we had a completely opposite view on this. I think the best investors are optimistic, because through hard times, you need to be optimistic to believe that market will recover, and that you need to be able to navigate that short-term downside volatility in order to benefit from that future upside volatility. And that person was actually in the opposite. They were always waiting for the crash, and they were always leaning on the conservative side. And I think that mindset can be extremely costly for someone, especially in the accumulation stage. Now, if someone is in the decumulation stage, you're in retirement, then you should have your portfolio structure to be able to withstand any type of volatility, to make sure that your expenses are covered. But anyhow, that's a different topic for a different day, which I will cover for sure. But then now the third part of the mental wealth is space, the creation of stillness and solitude to think, reset, wrestle with questions, and recharge, the ability and willingness to listen to your inner voice. How to improve, and this is really key, because I don't think I've ever had as much space as I have right now to do those things: think, reset, wrestle with questions, and recharge. And I think this is one of the healthiest thing that I've been able to help to improve my mental health. And I'm saying that as someone who attempted suicide when I was 17 years old, which I will make a podcast episode about this. It's going to be 16 years in May 20. I'm still thinking about how I'm going to position it and what's the benefit for the others out there. And I had a very interesting journey from my teenage years all the way to who I am today. And I think that journey and that growth can help other people out there who may be going through maybe tougher times, or they might have children or people around them who are going through tougher times. I want to leave you here on the mental wealth side. This is a trick to improve your mental health, and it's called the 111 journaling method. And it works because it's simple. And I'm sharing this with you to keep myself accountable, because I've always wanted to journal, and I have not been consistent with it. I've had very short periods of time. My fiance, she journals every day. So I'm putting this out there because I want you to keep me accountable around journaling. And you do this once a day. Ideally, you would do this at night. I'm still debating if I should do this at night or in the morning, but you basically write one win, allows you to appreciate your progress, one point of tension allows you to get that topic off your mind and onto paper, and then one point of gratitude allows you to reflect on the most important things in your life. So one win, one point of tension, and one point of gratitude. Once a day, 111 journaling method. So that's my commitment to you. I'm sharing this publicly. I want to be able to include this in my daily routine. It might not be every day, but if I'm good 80% of the time, I think it's going to be a huge win for me. All right, let's move on to physical wealth. So this is your health, your fitness, your vitality. So physical wealth is defined by a focus on the controllable actions around your movement, your nutrition, and your recovery. Those are the three pillars of physical wealth. So let's cover them. Movement, daily body movement through a combination of cardiovascular exercise and resistance training, activities to promote stability and flexibility. Nutrition, consumption of primary whole unprocessed foods to meet your major nutrient needs, supplementing as necessary to meet any micronutrient needs. And then recovery, high quality, consistent sleep performance, and other recovering promoting activities. Now, I'll be honest with you, I am an absolute geek when it comes down to fitness. My life surrounds around fitness. I absolutely love fitness. I love sports, but I love fitness. Mainly now I'm focused on kind of this combination around high rocks, but all the fitness around high rocks. So aerobic conditioning, running, rowing, ski erg, lots of functional movements. And then, of course, my nutrition. I track, I would say, about 90% of my calories using MyFitnessPal. My recovery, as far as sleep, I mean, as I'm recording this podcast, I went for the last 3 days. I went 92, 94, 93, 94, 95 sleep score, and then 91. So over the last 4 nights, for example. But I track my sleep. I try to go to bed at the same time, try to wake up at the same time every day. If you're out there listening to this podcast and you're into health and fitness, I mean, we will definitely get along because it's a huge part of my life. When I don't consume financial planning content, I consume fitness content. So in 2012, there was a paper published by the Journal of Aging Research. So researchers found that all cause of mortality was reduced by a striking 30 to 35% in the physically active as compared to the physically inactive. So just being physically active can reduce all cause mortality by a third. This is huge. So in other words, a little bit of exercise goes a long way and a lot of exercise goes a longer way. Now, the last topic is the financial wealth. The last bucket of being wealthy is the financial wealth. And this is defined as your financial assets minus your financial liabilities, and a figure often referred as net worth. Now, on your scorecard, there's an added nuance. Your liabilities include your expectations of what you need, your definition of enough. This is so critical in financial planning, and this is one of our questions in my onboarding process with new clients. What is your definition of enough? What does enough means to you? If your expectations rise faster than your assets, you will never have a life of true financial wealth because you'll always need more. Financial wealth is built upon growing income, managing expenses, and investing the difference in long-term assets that compounds meaningfully over time. This is what we mean by transferring your peak earnings years into lasting financial independence. There's this concept called hedonic adaptation, that biological predisposition to return to a baseline after a positive event means that no financial win ever quite satiates. So that means that's why when you have a new car after a few months, you're not really as excited about that new car anymore. If you have a home, you might be excited when you first got your home, but now you realize that all your friends are getting nicer home than you. So then that home is not bringing you that same joy anymore that it used to do when you first move in because you're going back to that baseline. So your current definition of more becomes your future definition of not enough as you set your sights on the next level that you convince yourself will bring happiness and contentment. And this is a huge trap. That's why setting your sight on something that when I'll have a nicer car, I'll be happy. When I'll have this, I'll be happy. And I tend to be very guilty of that in terms, even in my own business. When my business will be to this level, I'll be happier and whatnot. But setting your sights on future definition or future expectations can really lead to unhappiness. So if your expectations are growing faster than your assets, you will never have the true definition of or financial wealth. Your aim then becomes building financial wealth through income generation, expense management, and long-term investments, up to the point where it enables that enough life that you've defined. So it's really important to define what's enough and then work backwards. What you need to earn, how can you spend, and then how can you get to that point of financial independence? What is your number, so to speak? That's another term in financial planning. When you reach that number, then works become optional. Because if you're not enough without it, you'll never be enough with it. So let's cover the 3 buckets. Income generation. This is create stable, growing income through primary employment, secondary employment, and passive streams. This is where focusing on your career, your education, your skills, whether you're employed or whether you're a business owner, regardless of the route that you took, your income is the most important as far as setting the bar of how much is coming in. And then after that, you can make the other decisions. But that's where you need to start. Then you need to look at the expense side, which is entirely in your control. Manage expenses so that they're reliably below your income level and grow at a slower rate. This is key because it's very easy to inflate your lifestyle as your income increases. So being able to grow your income faster than your expenses and increasing that gap is really key to building long-term financial wealth. And then the long-term investments is invest the difference between your income and your expenses in long-term efficient, low-cost assets that compound effectively, which is exactly the investment methodology that we implement for clients. Keep them things simple, efficient, that compounds meaningfully well over time in order to allow them to reach all their financial goals. The gap between your income and your expenses is the most important tool in your financial independence toolkit. And it's the tool that you get to create. It's in your power. And the gap that you generate, the difference between your income and your expenses, is the foundational asset on which financial wealth is built. The reason is simple. You can cut your expenses only so much, but you can increase your income forever. That's why when you're a business owner, yes, your income might be more volatile and might be more risky than someone who may be employed. Again, but if you're employed, you can get laid off anytime. But if you're a business owner, you tend to have the ability to massively increase your income depending on the role that you're in and the type of sector and business that you're running. But most likely, you'll be able to increase your income much faster than someone who might be trapped into an employment where it's a bit more set in stone as far as what the income growth looks like. Now, there's no right or wrong. Each route comes with huge trade-offs. So I don't think there's any right or wrong. I think what's key is knowing the income trajectory that you're on, having a really good control of your expenses, and then making sure that gap, you're maximizing your opportunity to invest it and invest it wisely so that you make your money work for you, which is, by the way, one of the biggest problem that I'm seeing or missed opportunity that I'm seeing when clients reach out is that gap that they've created, usually they might park it into a GIC. I've seen that multiple times, hundreds of thousands of dollars just parked into a corporate account because they didn't know what to do with it. And that can be extremely costly over time. And that's what I help you with, is making sure that gap is maximized based on your goals. The first rule of compounding: never interrupt it unnecessarily. This is a famous quote by Charlie Munger. Also, I want to talk about a side note on Warren Buffett. How did he amass his wealth? So again, based on when this book was written, Warren Buffett had a net worth of over 130 billion. Figure made even more stunning by the fact that the vast majority of this wealth was built after his 60th birthday. So according to the most estimates, he reached 1 million at the age of 30, 25 million at the age of 40, 375 million at the age of 50, and 1 billion at the age of 56. That means that it took him roughly 32 years from when he started working for Benjamin Graham at age 24 up to his 56th birthday to earn 1 billion, or his first billion. But it just 37 years to earn his next $129 billion. He's earned 1 billion in 32 years, and he's earned 129 billion in 37 years. That is wild. And that is exactly the definition of compounding. And Warren Buffett created one of the history's greatest compounding machine, got out of its way and allowed it to work on his behalf. Money invested earlier in time typically grows more than money invested later in time. And compounding money is easier than saving money. So once you're able to save it, make sure that you make every single use of it as much as possible in terms of creating yourself future wealth in order to fund your goals and reach potentially that financial independence number faster, if that's what matters to you. Paraphrasing a well-known proverb, the best time to start was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. The average return compounded over long periods of time can produce extraordinary outcome. You don't need to be outsmarting the market. You don't need to be shooting the lights out. Average returns will compound, and I've never seen a plan not succeed by just capturing average returns. And in the recent times, you can look at my previous articles, we've been seeing stellar returns just by being broadly exposed to the general market. So lastly, I just want to touch on the 5 levels of financial wealth. So level 1 is the baselines. Your needs are met. That includes food and shelter. Your level 2 is the once you've exceeded the baseline, now you're looking at modest pleasures become accessible. That includes meals at restaurants, simple vacations, spending on education. Number three is the baseline needs are no longer top of mind, and now you're focused on saving, investing, and compounding wealth. More significant pleasures, such as multiple vacations, are readily available. More aggressive asset compounding generally begins at this level three. Now, level four, most reasonable pleasures are readily available. Asset accumulation accelerates, and assets begin to generate passive income to cover some lifestyle expenses. This is key because you're getting really close to your financial independence, or closer. This is the level where moderate financial independence, as you can reduce your active income and continue to live the same lifestyle. This is when you can start to ease back from your efforts in your career or your business, and then you can start using some passive assets to supplement the gap if there's any. And then level five, all pleasures are available. Asset accumulation reaches escape velocity. Asset accumulation reaches escape velocity, and assets generate passive income in excess of all lifestyle expenses. This is the level of complete financial independence, as you can remove all active income and continue to live the same lifestyle. This is the true definition of financial independence, when all your expenses are covered by passive income. And this is based on your definition of your enough life. What does it mean to have enough? And then once you've defined what does it mean to have enough, this is why you need to focus on your income until you get there. And then you need to control your expenses along the way. And you need to be maximizing the gap between your income and your expenses to reach that financial independence number. So if there's one idea I want you to walk away, with today, is this: that wealth is not just what sits on your balance sheet. It's how you spend your time, the quality of your relationship, the strength of your body, the clarity of your mind. And yes, it's also the financial capital that gives you options, but financial wealth matters. But money alone doesn't build you a rich life. It simply enables the other forms of wealth to exist. And the mistakes I think that many high performers make is that they spend decades optimizing only one category on the scoreboard: more income, more assets, more success on paper, while time, relationship, health, and purpose quietly fall behind. The goal is not to abandon your financial ambition. The goal is integration. Because at the end of the day, the wealthiest people are not necessarily the ones with the highest net worth. They're the ones who build a life they actually enjoy living. So I want to leave you with one simple question. If you looked at your life through the lens of these five types of wealth, which one are you currently over-investing in? And which one might need more attention? The question alone can change how you design the next decade of your life. If this conversation resonated with you and you want help building that kind of integrated life, that's exactly the work that I do with clients. You can find my contact information in the show notes. And with that, thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode of the Personal CFO Podcast.